This is not the second time we had to record this.
That'd be insane.
This is the second time you've had to record this.
It's like as if we went through our deck once and now we have to shuffle it and we have to do it again.
Dude, good tie-in,
Man,
bro.
we did. That was a lot way to have done that.
What's up, everybody? My name is Nick.
I'm Mike.
We are the Brothers Murph, and that's right. This is the first time we record this. Our deck. We've had a lot of really... Drop some likes down below because your boys have been having technical difficulties lately.
It's been weird, man. I'm like, what happened?
We very rarely have a technical difficulty. We have to refilm stuff. We have had to, over the last couple of weeks, had to refilm so much stuff.
Every single thing?
And every single time for different reasons.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's been weird. But nonetheless, we're going to talk about our favorite deck building games because deck building is all about going through something, resetting,
Shuffle
and
it
then
up.
going through again.
Boom, that's right. So we have 10 games to talk about. We are going to talk about more games over on Patreon. So if you are a patron, which you can become by going to the description of this video, you get all sorts of stuff like that. Exclusive content, first impressions of games. We recently did a first impressions of Fin Span, so you can go check that out over there. And things like that. So go check out the Patreon. In the meantime, let's get to this list.
I have to get a new card for my deck. What do I want? Do I want to get a Crystal Cobalt? Oh, you're available, but I think you have to subscribe. Subscribe to get in my deck.
Number 10 is just a pure, straight-up deck builder. Deck building is kind of one of those things where a lot of deck building games are like, that's the entire mechanic, but it's also can be a big part of a game, a really small part of a game. It can kind of be a bunch of stuff, but this is going to be Hero Realms.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of the classic. You start off with a hand of cards that are pretty basic, don't do much, but then you're going to start buying better cards, and so as you shuffle through that deck, you have a better and better chance of putting together a really combo-rific turn or producing more attack and stuff. And this is the simple premise of attacking your opponent and trying to knock them out before you get knocked out. And the thing that we always really like about Hero Realms is it's not a long game.
No.
So it jumps you right into getting the really cool cards very quickly and start pulling off turns that feel really big in a short period of time, which is pretty awesome. I feel like you can get in, get some stuff done, and get out and feel like you had a really big game experience.
Yeah, one of the, I guess, quote-unquote drawbacks of deck building games is they take a minute to get going because you usually start off with a pretty weak hand of cards, and the point is you use those to buy more cards, and as they shuffle through your deck, you get cooler and cooler and cooler and cooler. That's a great mechanic, but sometimes, depending on how long the game is, it can kind of take you a while to get really, really cool. Hero Realms or Star Realms, because they're basically the exact same game,
for sure.
You can buy really, really powerful cards on turn one, and you can start just doing crazy stuff right away. It kind of throws you immediately into the middle of a normal deck building game. You basically get to become the super cool version of yourself right away, and that's really, really nice, particularly in a short game like this. It's let's cut out all that chuffa of building up and let's just throw you right into it, and it's really, really fun for that reason.
Yeah, totally agree. There are character packs you can get for this, which give you asymmetric starting decks and a little bit of an ability, so you can be like a wizard or a ranger and stuff like that. Highly recommend that. But even just the base game, just some random constable. Even the base game is really cool, and I think there's another kind of mini campaign expansion for co-ops. There's just made a lot of content. Also, if you like this kind of thing in Star Realms, there's a heck of a lot of content for that. So either way, if you want a quick deck builder, the Realms games are really good. So you've got 206, 207, 208, 209, 210. I got too many bones. That's too many bones. I think I overshot the number there. Got extra vertebrae, so my spine can do a real wiggle thing like this.
These here phalanges.
These bad boys. That's too many bones.
Metatarsals and stuff.
You know what I mean? This is a chip theory game.
Yeah, and this is what's generally called a pool builder, where you're usually building a pool of dice, and that falls in the same category of dice, because again, of deck builders could use them, and they usually come back to you. And it's funny, because I never really thought about Too Many Bones as a pool building game, because you're kind of putting on your sheet, but then you're using them, they're coming back to you, and as the game goes on, you're getting more and more of these dice to put in your pool. And I was like, oh yeah, Too Many Bones is a pool builder. I never even thought of it that way, but it totally is. So Too Many Bones is a game where you're taking on a gear lock, which actually are these right here. Chip Theory randomly sent us these coasters. I'm not gonna lie, Chip Theory, we use them for almost every single video.
It's pretty sweet, man.
So here's the thing, publishers, if you want us to use your stuff, send us merch or send us coasters, because we will use them.
That's what we do.
But nonetheless, in this game, you are taking on the role of a gear lock, which is kind of like Dobby.
A little goblin
Yeah,
thing.
a little goblin looking thing.
Like a little...
And you're going to be going against some big baddie, some big tyrant. And you're basically going through a bunch of different encounters, which are almost always going to be various battles, until you get to the big one where you're fighting the tyrant. If you win that, that's how you win the game. It's a cooperative game, but everyone has their own gear lock. And every gear lock is completely unique. They all have completely unique dice. They all have different feels to them, different stuff they do, and the variety of them is very, very big. And on top of that, they all have a ton of different dice. I think there's like 16 dice for each, or maybe 25,
Yeah,
something
there's
like that.
a
I
pretty
can't remember exactly
big
what the
menu.
grid is. I mean, it's like 5x4 or something like that. But a ton of stuff. And a lot of times, unless you're playing a really, really long game of this, because the different tyrants have different lengths to them, you're almost always not using all of the dice. You can kind of build out these characters in a lot of different ways, and it really adds a lot of intrigue to the game. But you are just building a pool of dice that you're using every encounter.
Yeah, so it functions differently than like a typical bag builder or deck builder, but it is that kind of same thing of like you're starting off with basic abilities and attacks. You're then expanding your roster, specializing in maybe this kind of thing. I'm going to be a highly offensive character, or I'm going to be more support and defense and stuff, and that might be dictated by the dice you choose, or certainly by the character you choose, and the abilities. And so it's kind of cool that you just get this like expanded menu to select from, rather than hoping to get the right draw or right pull from a bag or something like that. So it functions a little differently, but it is that same thing of like, once these things are used up, they're kind of used up for a while, but eventually you will refresh and get to use them again, which is cool. And there's just literally so much content for too many bones.
Just a bunch,
you can explore forever.
Pretty much, yeah. I've been to Orleans.
Really?
Yeah. I went there before I played board games a lot.
Okay, I was gonna say, did it feel like a board game? But I guess you wouldn't know.
I don't know. I was just there.
Dang.
When I was in France, one of my friends, her like cousin lived there, so we went out to like Orleans for like a day and visited them.
That was probably the most lovely day.
It was fine, yeah.
But this is Orleans board game
Yeah.
That we're talking about, which is a classic bag builder.
Bag builder, yeah.
Where you are going to be getting these little chits, they're followers, scholars and farmers and things like that. And then you're going to be pulling a certain amount of them out of your bag each round. And then using them to go to these various types of actions to do French stuff, right? So,
Cheese.
most of these cheese is part
Cheese
of it.
is in the game.
Most of the actions you get will
They require different of these followers.
a different mix, like a farmer and a sailor or whatever. And then a lot of times they'll allow you to bump up tracks that are associated with that worker type, and then also gain you more followers to put into your bag. To then hopefully pull out in the future, so you can start to specialize towards certain actions you're going to do and things like that. And you're trying to like produce goods. You're dealing with various kind of like maladies that come from the events.
It was old-timey stuff. There's like plagues and crap everywhere.
I mean, yeah, literally like all the time, man. You're getting, like I said, bumped up these tracks. You can start drawing more chits per round. You're building guild halls and kind of traveling around the area. To collect stuff and do all these things that are worth various points. It's kind of a sandboxy game in that way, where there's a lot of things you could do that are worth points, but it all comes down to every round you're going to be taking stuff that you used, putting it back in your bag, giving that bag a shuffle, and then pulling out 4, 5, 6, 7, depending on how far you've gone up the night track, chits for the next round. So you're kind of trying to hope to make use of these actions as best you can, or invest in them, because it might take 3 of these followers, but I only have 1 of them, but I can put that 1 down, and then it'll stay on my board until I fill the action completely to then trigger the action. So you can kind of do some stuff like that to manipulate what's in your bag and maybe hedge your bets a little bit toward what you're going to pull out, but it is, that kind of random, you get a random pull and you have to make stuff happen with what you get.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of do with what you got. You can try and kind of cull your bag, so you can send send followers to a certain place, like this deeds board where they'll live forever.
Hall,
So like you can kind of fill your bag in a specific way for that, and then kind of cull stuff out of it. There's also a ton of content for this game. There's a couple different expansions which add kind of different ways to play. There's the invasion expansion, which is it's like the same size as Orleans.
Yeah, same size.
It's got all these different ways to play, including Orleans Invasion, which is like a co-op version. So like there's tons of ways to play this game, but it all comes down to just that bag building, and just what you do with those followers depends on which one of these games you're playing, basically. But it's super, super fun. I love it. It was kind of, it was our first bag builder.
Gotta
be,
it
right?
Would be. Yeah, I got it. That or like Quacks at Quedlinburg.
I feel like it was before Quacks, but
be.
yeah. It definitely came out before Quacks. I think we played before Quacks too. But nonetheless, love Orleans. Great bag builder with a big old euro attached to it. It's a good time. It's funny because this also is one that didn't feel like just a deck builder, but it is. It's a deck builder with dice.
It 100% is. It's Cubitos.
Yeah.
And it's also a racing game. So again, you're kind of thinking about getting through your race, but you are doing this through rolling quite a few dice on your turn. And the way you get and use your dice and stuff functions like a deck building game. So every round, you're going to be rolling, I think, minimum of 9 dice.
I think you
it can
start
go
at
up from
9,
there.
yeah.
And you're rolling these dice, and these dice are mostly blanks.
They're basically trash dice.
Basically trash dice.
Yeah.
And they might have money on them or these little feet symbols which will allow you to move. And then after you roll your dice and make your selections, you can buy better dice, which then go into your discard, which then have to wait until they get shuffled around from your draw side of your board. Once you have no dice, and you bring all your used up dice and bring them back, and that's the kind of deck building element. But you are ultimately pushing your luck with these dice. Dice are random and weird. Most of these dice have like 1 or 2 faces on them and then blanks. And once you are rolling and have 3 symbols, you've rolled 3 successes, say, at that point you can choose to stop and bank what you have, or you can keep rolling. And if you keep rolling from that point forward and roll all blanks,
which is very likely.
Very likely because, again, the best dice have 3 sides and 3 blanks.
The best
so
thing you
it's
get is 50-50
at best. If you roll all blanks, you bust, and you move up a fan track and stuff, and there's some benefits to be had, but you don't get to progress nearly as much on your turn. So there's kind of the fun of that, of like building out these different dice. The different dice have different abilities. They're going to give you different ways to move around and navigate the map or get other dice and different bonuses and stuff like that. All with the goal of getting across the finish line first.
It's just a race.
Yeah.
It's a one-lap race. There's also like 4 different race boards, so you can also have different races that you can do. And then on top of that, Mikey said there's like all these specialty dice have different abilities, but the die is obviously the same. But it has like 3 of these different symbols on it. But then what those symbols do can change out each game. And for every single die, there's like 7 different abilities.
Something like that, it's a ton.
So you can have, the amount of variability in this game is insane. Because again, every single die face, every single type of die, color of die, has 7 different abilities. And so you can play like very specific kinds of games that are like very aggressive or very this or very that. Or you can just like, every single one, just grab a random one, grab a random one, grab a random one, and just go. And you're gonna have a different game every time because sometimes like, oh, this die is really good in this game. And this die is maybe not quite as good, but then the next game, that might switch depending on the different abilities. It's super, super fun. It's in this weird cube world that I fundamentally don't understand. But I really, really like Cubitos. But it is just kind of like a deck builder, but with just dice.
And that's kind of fun.
This one is interesting. This is going to be Faum. And Faum is interesting because it is a deck builder, but it's mostly a deck kind of programming game, which
sequencing game. Yeah, you'll never shuffle your deck of your discard pile, which is kind of fundamental to deck builders.
Yeah,
but it does in every other way function like similarly to a deck builder.
Yeah, this is a game where you are in Egypt and you are essentially kind of like workers. You work for the pharaoh.
We're subjects of the pharaoh.
Yeah, exactly, right? So who knows? But basically, the pharaoh owns everything on the board because the pharaoh owned everything back then. And so as you're building out this board, you don't actually own anything. And the things that you build can be used by other people and vice versa. So it's got this kind of really interesting shared infrastructure. But it all comes down to card play. You basically have cards, you play a card on your turn, and then that card will allow you to do something. Might allow you to put out workers, might allow you to build this thing here, do this there, get rid of crocodiles. Crocodiles are in the game too. A lot of crocs at the start of the game. Because it's Egypt and stuff, you know? Egyptian stuff.
Everyone's tame the land.
Exactly. And so you're doing that, and then that'll go into your discard pile. But eventually you'll run out of cards, or you'll decide to kind of stop, and then you'll take what's called an administrative action. Very thematic.
Board game term of all time.
My gosh, it's so boring.
You shall have an administrative time.
Exactly. And basically, you're going to then get to draw the top cards from your discard pile back into your hand. You never shuffle your discard pile, and you can't like rifle through it to get what you want.
Can't rearrange.
You can't rearrange. You get the cards back in the order that you discarded them. So when the last card discarded, you're getting that one back first. And you get a base amount of 3, and then you can pay more money to keep getting cards back. So you basically want to program your discard pile to take the cards that are like lesser cards, because throughout the game, one thing you can also do is buy new cards, which go directly into your hand. You want to get your old cards kind of to the bottom of that discard pile because you don't want them to keep coming back into your hand because you want these better cards there. It's this really interesting way of doing deck building where you have a hand of cards, you're getting more cards, and then you're going back through your deck, but you're doing it in this weird sequencing way.
Yeah, I find that really interesting. The kind of cadence of the game is such that you will progress through this deck of cards. That's what times out the game.
Yeah.
And the cards are always coming into the market in order from low number to high.
Yeah.
And the higher the number, the more powerful the card is. So you kind of have this general trajectory. But you might also get a really high value card early in the game just based on how the market is. And so you want to make sure you don't inadvertently bury that card.
Yeah.
You also need to make sure that those lower cards, like the one that allows you to build roads, you don't bury it too fast because like, well, now I don't have anything in the market I can buy that can do this thing. And it's also kind of buried. It's really expensive to get that card back.
Yeah.
So you really are thinking of the order and then when you choose to refresh and get those cards back into your hand. So it is a fun kind of twist on deck building type mechanisms.
Yeah.
But it does have that sort of cadence of your hand is now low or you're out of cards completely, and I'm going to retrieve these cards, but you have a little bit more control over how and what you get back.
Yeah.
And then how you kind of progress and then change up that hand of cards throughout the game. I think it's a really neat thing. The whole kind of shared infrastructure is also very cool, and the little crocodile meeples are elite.
They are.
Huh? I thought it'd be taller.
Hey, buddy, you need some help?
Oh, yeah.
I'm here to help.
I'm just trying to have myself like a little bit of a stroll in your fine city, and I was looking for the Empire State Building, but I think I've come across a random nondescript office building that surely some board gamers work in. Can you help me? Like, I'm just trying to figure out my route for my tourism.
Oh yeah,
here.
man, I'm definitely here to help you get en route to your destination.
Who are you talking to? Is that a camera? Why do I have a microphone on? Who even put me onto this?
Thank you for coming to our city.
Well, that sketch ended exactly as everyone expected. Exploring a new city is always really exciting, and you get to do that in En route. This is a stroll and write game where you'll be strolling around a new city and delivering visitors to various landmarks around the city and then routing a course through it at the end of the game. Each round, the active player will play a visitor card, and the player on their left and right will play one as well. These visitor cards will have a certain shape, and they will also have a coordinate in the top left. You will put the two coordinates together, and that will dictate where you can put these visitors in your city. You will then also draw a route next to the location where you put those visitors. Once the game ends after 10 rounds, you will have to decide a final route throughout your city amongst all the ones that you made, and anything not on that final route gets erased and doesn't count. But in this game, you don't just have the starter city, you can also explore London, New York, Cairo, Rio de Janeiro, Hong Kong, and Paris. So if En route seems like a game you'd like to explore, make sure to check it out down in the description below. And thank you so much for Crowd for sponsoring. This game could have even been higher. This is Abandon All Artichokes, baby. The only good tin in the entire board game
The
world.
only one that's acceptable because it's artichoke shaped. Every other tin should absolutely be recycled as quick as possible.
Yes. Turn it into, a spatula or something.
Why not?
Spatula.
Metal spatula.
Why not?
But yeah, this is Abandon All Artichokes, which is a deck wrecking game,
Yes.
which I'm back on right now. I've been on it.
Yeah, you have been on it.
This is a game where you're going to start off with a deck of cards that are all artichokes, and artichokes are not useful. In fact, you hate them.
They're trash.
It's clearly a fancy world because artichokes are amazing. And you are going to be harvesting cards, which are vegetables, you're getting from the garden row, and you're putting them into your hand, and these are going to allow you to do various actions, many of which will allow you to compost artichokes, which is trashing them out of your deck. And you're trying to get a situation where you can end up at the end of your turn drawing your new hand of 5 cards and have 0 artichokes in your hand. If you do that, you instantly win.
Yep.
That's the whole crux of the game. And this is one that is just really fun because it has this really specific goal, and it starts you off in a position where it's literally impossible to win. You cannot win on turn 1 without vast amounts of cheating.
A little bit.
And the types of vegetables are really interesting. Like there's broccoli, which allows you to compost an artichoke, but only if you have 3 or more in hand. So it's a really good like early game card. There's like ears of corn, which allow you to get like extra vegetable cards. There's ones that allow you to steal cards, potentially draft cards, and pass them around. All sorts of different things. So it kind of gives you like little feelings of different game mechanisms in this kind of deck. Yeah, again, truly deck wrecking game. You are drafting cards, shuffling up your deck and stuff, so it follows the kind of standard deck building rules there. But with the goal of trashing your cards as quickly and effectively as possible, which is cool.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. It's an interesting concept where usually a deck building game, the goal is to play your cards. In this one, the goal is to draw cards and draw the
Yes.
right cards, or basically not draw the wrong cards, I guess is a better way of putting
Sure.
it. It's very, very interesting. It's super quick. It works so well. I love this game so much. We'll always sing it from the mountaintops, and I'm just gonna let y'all know right now.
No, you don't have to.
No, I'm gonna.
don't
It
have to.
has to be said.
You don't have to.
Mike. In everyday life,
What?
Mikey has a specific way, and ask his wife Karen because she hates it. Mike has a specific way of referring to artichokes. Mike, what do you usually call artichokes?
I call artichokes choke me daddies. Because artichokey, okie chokey, choke.
So if you ever hear Mike just out in the wild say like, "Man, I'm really craving a choke me daddy," he is specifically
I am
talking
hungry
about an
for
artichoke.
food, for dinner specifically.
The next one is another bag building game. This is gonna be Wonderland's War. One of the game with maybe the best production
Maybe, dude.
ever, other than maybe like Mechs vs. Minions, which is kind of
or Tidal Blades. Druid City kind of like has.
That's what they do,
has
right?
made
Yeah,
hay
and Mechs
with
vs. Minions
these-
kind of doesn't count because it was done by a multi-billion-dollar corporation. So, but nonetheless, Wonderland's War is a really great bag building game, and that is I'd say that's the crux of the game ultimately, but particularly the kind of like second half of each round.
Yeah.
This is a game where you are in Wonderland and everything is going a little crazier than usual. Everyone's a little more bloodthirsty than usual because they usually are at a high standard of bloodthirst.
Well, I mean, at least the queen is.
Yeah,
just
at
all
least
about that
somebody
life.
is, right?
Yeah.
And so basically the first kind of phase of each round is going to be the table round where you're going around the Mad Hatter's
you're
table.
having tea time,
You're having
you
tea
know?
time. And you'll basically be moving around and stopping on certain spots. This is going to have cards on there. Those cards are going to give you various followers, allow you to put like your kind of general troops into the different areas of Wonderland that you're going to be fighting over. They might allow you to do a whole bunch of different stuff. But what the main thing they're going to allow you to do is get new support chips. There are these cool little poker chips that have a bunch of different, like the card. What are the cards? What are they called?
The cards.
The card troops,
The card
they're
people.
like the Queen of Hearts troops are always like decks of cards.
Yeah.
There's like a whole bunch of different ones, like a tulip and all these kind of things. And they all will have an ability, and kind of like Cubitos we talked about earlier, each one of these chips is just a chip, and there's an ability next to it. There's like 4 different abilities. So again, these can change out from game to game. And then you'll be getting these troops and putting them into your bag. And then once everyone has done the kind of tea time part of the game, you'll then move and go area by area, and whoever has presence in that area, you will then start doing bag building, and you'll start pulling these chips out of there, and you are fighting over the area. As you pull out these chips, again, they will do different things. They might give you a certain amount of strength. They might allow you to eliminate certain things. They do a whole bunch of different stuff.
Yep.
And then you're basically at the end of time that everyone's done pulling out all these chips. You can bust in this game if you draw too many madness. So you're kind of trying to push your luck as you're going. You'll see who won the area by having the most strength, and they will get a certain amount of points for that.
Yep.
It's just so good because, again, you have all like the general chips that are in every game. There's all these Wonderlandians that you can get, and they all do like different stuff, but it all comes around that bag building. Every single character, if you're playing like the Jabberwock or Alice, you have certain things that you can do. There's so much going on in this game. It's just such a blast.
It is really fun. The production is just lavish.
I
and
generally
wonderful.
we tend to not be like, you need to get the deluxe version of every game. This is one of those games where I'm like, if you're gonna get the big cool one.
The deluxe is
like,
really cool.
It's really nice.
Not
And you
gonna
want
lie.
those chips, get the cool. And to be fair, I think almost everyone does when they get this game. But this is one of those games where I really do think it's worth it.
Yeah, it's really fun to push your luck, the kind of simultaneous reveal of what you draw, and potentially losing all your supporters and then losing the area. There's just a lot of fun stuff. The art's amazing.
Well, it's cool because like each area, like the first round, this area might be like worth like 5 points, but the next round's worth like 12.
Yeah,
so it also
like,
depends
ooh,
throughout
the
the game
timing,
of when
yeah.
you're trying to do stuff. Yeah, it's just so good.
Yeah, it's really, really fun, and there's highs and lows and big swings and stuff, but it's just splashy, and we really enjoy it.
Number 3 is going to be The Lost Ruins of Arnok. This is one of those games where deck building is a part of the game, but there's also worker placement. There's a whole bunch of different stuff in this game.
Resource management.
But I would still say deck building and worker placement are like the big mechanics in it.
Agreed, yeah. So you're going to be gaining these item and or artifact cards throughout the game that are going to give you actions you can take for a turn. Might be like an instant ability to get some resources. The cards are also how you place your workers. Your workers are going to require some amount of transportation movement. Your campsites can kind of be anything because it's a little boot or beyond. There's some things that you need to take a truck or a boat to get to the different dig sites. And you're going to have to spend cards purely for their transportation ability. And so it is integrated directly into the worker placement as well. Kind of like a Dune Imperium, which, spoiler, it's not going to be on this list because Nick doesn't like it. But
I don't like
just to
Dune
say,
Imperium, sorry.
this was our favorite between these two. We had to let him know.
It's true.
Had to let him know. There's also no Dominion.
my fault,
So sorry about that.
Also no Dominion, yeah.
And now we know if someone skips, we're like, no, this, no
So
that. You didn't watch the
You're
video.
going to be shamed in the comments.
Anyway, Arnak. So you are going to be using these cards, using your workers and stuff to gain resources and ultimately funnel them into your progress up these research tracks, because that's what we're doing. We are going out, discovering things, writing about it, journaling and stuff, and presenting our research. And that's represented by this research track, which you will kind of go up and stuff.
Yeah.
There's like guardians you can overcome and everything.
Tons of stuff.
And it all comes down to the resources required to do this task.
That's really what this game is more than anything. Like, the main mechanics are like deck building and worker placement, but this is a resource management game.
Yep.
Because you're getting resources, you're then spending those resources. That will then get you this resource that you can spend over here. And every round of the game, you're basically just trying to extend your round and do as much as possible. And as the game goes on, you ramp up and ramp up. The first round, you're not going to do too much. The fifth round, hopefully you're doing a whole bunch because you just have all these engines going.
Yep.
But again, it comes around to that deck building, that worker placement. It's just so fun. They've really supported this game. They've given like asymmetric character powers. So like everyone
Essential, love it.
starts with their own deck of cards. They all work a little bit differently.
Now a solo and two-player campaign you can play
Yeah.
through, or you can use the materials from that just for your normal games. There's really a ton of great stuff. They've really done a good job with it. And one thing I like, this seems like a minor difference from standard deck builders, but I think is really nice. When you purchase a new card, an item card, well, first of all, if you get an artifact card, it immediately triggers and goes into your
which
play
is
area.
nice.
That's dope. If you get an item card, it goes to the bottom of your deck,
right.
not your discard pile.
Yeah.
And you think, like, what's the difference? But it does mean that oftentimes it will come up into your hand the very next round. And I really dig that about it. It's like, okay, that's pretty cool. Like, it makes you kind of feel like you're building that engine for immediate use, or maybe I buy two cards, I know kind of now what my direction is in the next round. I think that's honestly pretty cool.
It's intentional, right? Like it allows you to do intentional gameplay as opposed when it just goes to your discard pile, you just have to hope it comes, well, it will eventually come back around. You have to hope it comes back around in a beneficial way.
Yes.
Because sometimes you're like, oh, this card's great, but I didn't draw any other cards that work with this card. And so this is nice. You'd be like, oh, I can maybe try and like plan things out a little bit more. Which is nice.
It's pretty cool. But either way, however you get down with Arnak, there's just a ton of fun stuff to explore.
Number 2 is a board game based on a video game, but they're both just straight up deck builders. And this is going to be Slay the Spire, the board game.
Slay stuff.
Or, is that what you're doing?
Oh, slaying.
Slay. Slay the Spire, the board game. Again, this is based off the video game Slay the Spire. But again, the video game is just a deck builder. It's also so cool to see such a popular video game essentially just being a board game. You know, it's like Dough from Antique or something like that, where you're like, this is just a board game.
Yeah, very
which
similar.
they then made a board game out of it. So, of course, they did. But yeah, this is a deck building game where you're going to take on a character like the Ironclad or the Silent. Every single character has a completely unique deck of tons and tons of different cards, and they're all completely unique.
Yep.
There are some common cards that you can get amongst each player, but really what it is, you're playing out your character, learning the different cards of that, and then figuring out all the different ways that they can synergize together. The thing with the video game is the video game has a lot of bookkeeping that is done by the video game, because it'll be like, oh, now this is 10% less. This now does all these different like buffs or modifiers stack on top of each other in these kind of ways that you really can't do in real life. So they decided to make a board game out of it, and they kind of like streamlined a lot of that, but kept all the other stuff that made the game really, really fun, which is like the deck building and the building out your character, and just basically making all the stuff work for an actual like analog board game. And it's just so unreal. We've both played Slay the Spire for hundreds of hours on digital, and the board game is, for us at least, just as fun.
Just as fun, and one thing that it does, and we always talk about, that it does different than the video game, is it provides you a cooperative experience so you can play multiplayer. Obviously, it also works great as a solo game, but it's really fun to have the Ironclad and the Silent simultaneously attacking these bad guys, and even there's not the turn structure of like, you do all your stuff, I do all my stuff, so you might play a card that buffs this bad guy, makes them vulnerable, and then I can come in with a big card and use the vulnerable that you produced to do this big attack.
Yeah.
And that's something that's just fundamentally different from the video game, which is a solo roguelike experience. And I think that is really cool.
Yeah,
I
it's
think it
very
opens
fun.
up all sorts of avenues for strategy that we didn't get to explore in the video game just by its nature.
Yeah.
But it keeps the familiarity of the characters, the cards, all those things you know. So if you know this character and their cards through and through, you're going to understand the cards they're going to have available here. They're the same. They just the math has changed for ease. Of
course.
I think it's really fun,
It's
and
super
it
fun.
gives you something unique. So it's familiar and new.
Yeah, we did a whole stream of it where we played through the whole thing, all three acts. And so make sure to go to our streams to look at that. It'll be here on YouTube. It's really, really fun. We absolutely love it. It's a banger.
Nick, sometimes a classic is a classic. And no, we're not talking about Dominion.
No, we're
We're
not.
talking about the Quest for El Dorado.
That's right.
All right, the Quest
All
for
right,
El Dorado
convince
is
me. Get
for
wrecked.
us. This is an early deck builder for us.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe it wasn't the first, but
No, right.
this is our kind of de facto recommendation for your first deck building
Mm-hmm.
game, because it gives you a nice, clear goal, which is to get to El Dorado first. It is a racing game.
Yeah, this is deck building is one of those mechanics that like there are a lot of like ease. Like again, it's not super hard to get like hero realms. We talk about number 10.
Yeah.
The thing is with like deck building is like when you're the only thing you're doing is deck building, it can be kind of like daunting when you're like you don't know what all the cards are, you don't really know how they synergize. In this one, because it's a racing game, and the racing game is the point of what you're trying to do.
Yep.
And the deck building is supporting that, and the way you go about that, and let's say taking the role of like maybe a dice roll to figure out how far you go or whatever.
Sure.
It just means it's really intuitive. Again, this is a game where you're trying to get to El Dorado, as Mikey was saying, and you're going through different land types. You're going through the jungle, so you have to have machete cards to chop through the jungle. If you're going across water, you need paddles to go across that. If you're going through markets and cities, you need money to be able to get through them. So it's like, oh, I have a card with a machete on it. I then can move into a machete spot because I'm chopping my way through the jungle. But then as you go throughout the game, you're getting more of these cards that might have 2 or 3 machetes on them. They might be a jack of all trades, which could be used as a machete, a paddle, or a money. You're getting these different things, but they all kind of make intuitive sense. And then as you get to the slightly more complex cards, you're already in the game and understanding what's going on. It's just, I don't know, it just works really, really well.
Yeah, it is just fun. Like, I think the whole nature of seeing where I am on the map and seeing what I need helps you make like those informed purchases. Like, well, okay, I know there's a lot of water coming up. Let me buy some water cards and things like that. The fact that the market only has some of the available cards at any one time, and so that new things are coming later, allows you to kind of take time to explain each card as it becomes available. So I think it makes that teach easier, and it's just, it's a compelling race every time. So yeah, it's just got a lot of great stuff going on that's giving you focus, but it's ultimately that same thing of like, I'm using my money cards, if I'm not moving through the market, to buy better cards, and you have that kind of classic deck building cadence to it, but I think with the clarity of trying to navigate this map, which of course you see from the start of the game, so I think you get to make smart, informed choices of what cards you get, what you focus on, and it kind of helps facilitate that for you, which is really nice for getting people into a mechanism, I think.
Yeah, it's just super fun. It's just great, and the choices in the game are great. You know, like the shorter route to get to El Dorado is usually going to be much more dense, and therefore you need stronger cards. And so you're like, do you just try and go through there? Do you try and go around? It's very easy to get stuck in the game. I don't mean stuck like you're completely stuck, but just like it's nice. It kind of has natural catch-up mechanisms where if someone's ahead because they're taking a short route, there's probably gonna be a time where they get stuck for a second, then everyone else kind of has a chance to catch up. But this game always ends up being really, really close.
Yeah.
It's just so good.
It also does a thing where you can just discard cards from your hand, and each card is half a money. So if I like don't have the right cards, I can just use those cards to maybe make better purchases, which help me get out of my jam quicker.
You can
so
also,
it's a really smart thing.
At the end of your turn, you can choose to discard whatever cards you want from your hand, but then keep some too. So you're like, oh, I'm going to keep this card because I'm at a spot where I might need it next round. And it's just a lot of little decisions like that that are great.
Yep.
It's outstanding. It's our favorite deck building
We
game.
like
But
it.
down in the comments, let us know what your favorite deck building, bag building, pool building, whatever kind of where you're getting stuff and it's kind of cycling through in that way.
Yeah.
Let us know what your favorite is down in the comments
Please
below.
do. As we mentioned at the top of this video, we have more games we are talking about in the deck building realm over on Patreon. So become a patron today if you are not, to get more stuff like that. And like I said, bonus top 10s, first looks, first impressions of games, unboxings, all sorts of different stuff. Best of the week, so we can talk a little bit more about the things we've been playing right here in the week itself. And stuff like that. So go check it out.
Yeah, indeed. And I think that's going to be it, y'all. Thank you so much for being here. Really, really appreciate you. Make sure to like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And we will see y'all later.
Thank you for watching that Decalicious Top 10. A special thanks to our monthly sponsor, Stupid Rat Creature. What a great rodent. We love him.
Also, remember when Nick chloroformed that guy? That was dark, right? That's pretty dark.